You are listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport Media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Well, we've got the Congressman joining us, so I'm going to bring him in right away. Congressman, I want to welcome you back to the Final Say program. Welcome.
Oh, Brett, thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I have to tell you, because you have so much experience in this area, but any day now I'm going to be having a son, or my wife and I are, and
I'm glad you corrected that.
Yes.
I've been corrected many times myself.
Now, I've told you before that I wish we had a congressman like you in the state of New Jersey or somewhere close here because we could really use that. But I really wish you were close now because you'd be able to deliver my son.
Well, it would be, I tell you, Brett, having delivered almost 5,000 of them, and I was at, just left Dobbins Bennett High School teaching or talking to about 40 students on politics and ethics and that sort of thing. And I've there's not a classroom that I don't go in this area around here where I live that I don't run across one or more students that are kids that I've delivered. So it's really a neat place to be in a small town where I am and begin to see these young people grow up and go into their careers. Really is fun. You're in for an exciting time in your life and a not so restful time in the near future, but it gets better.
Well, I am, and I have to say, since we had our other children who were 11 years older, all the technology and the baby stuff, like the carriages and the strollers and the car seats, it's amazing how fast everything changes. And, of course, the price goes up, too, but it's amazing.
Well, also, when my son had our first grandchild, he had a minivan, and we were going to the beach, and he has this one baby, and he calls up the night before and says, "Dad, do you have any room?" And I said, "Son, you've got a minivan. You only got one kid. What's the deal here? I carried you and your brother and all that around." So anyway, you're right. There's a lot more technology today.
It's funny you say that. When I was 9 and 11, my family drove out west from New Jersey. We drove straight out to California, and we went all over the place. But we did so the first time in one of the Dodge trucks, which would be the equivalent of like a big-size Ford Explorer.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you'd need a 18-wheeler and pulling a car behind that.
One of those big bus things you see, like the bands travel in with this trailer behind it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we have so many different things to get into, and I always want to give you the opportunity to give us a little bit of an update on what's going on with the health care law and we don't obviously like the law, but its implementation hasn't been much better either. And could you give us an update on some of the things that are going on right now and some things we could look forward in as Congress is working hard on many of these issues?
Brett, a couple of things that are really concerning to me, and a lot of people won't see this, but as a medical educator, I not only had a private practice, but also was a clinical professor in medical school for over 25 years. And what I'm seeing is less and less young people being encouraged to go into primary care. And many of the senior physicians are really looking for the exit signs. They're looking for a way out. And we're seeing it here in our local area, and it's really caused a tremendous disruption. And being a medical educator, the cost of medical education is a great concern to me. And I talk to students all the time that have $200,000-$300,000 in student loan debt, and how in the world can we continue to attract the best and brightest kids in this country to do the wonderful things that we've seen done, the cures of diseases? And I spoke to this high school class, and it's really an exciting time medically to be out there, unless you don't attract the best people to come and enjoy this wonderful career that I had as a physician. And I am very concerned about that, them leaving and then looking into an uncertain future, Brett. Here's a young person, 18, 19, 20 years old. They're smart. They're thinking, I've got to go through 10, 12, 14 years of education, a huge debt at the end of the tunnel, and an uncertain future. I think you lose a lot of very good people. So that's a concern. Second concern is I've had some businesses in, as you know, I wrote the Republican Study Committee alternative health care bill. If we're able to repeal the bill and to replace it with something, we've got a great bill to start with. But we had one a major business. And I'm going to, for their privacy, I'm not going to say who they were, but these are with hundreds of thousands or many thousands of employees, I should say. Very big company, national company. Stated that they had looked forward to 2018, as businesses do. Look, the government looks to the next budget cycle. Businesses look 2, 3, 4, 5 years down. How do we assign capital? How do we get capital? Is our company growing? Anyway, they looked at the Cadillac tax. That's a tax of 40% that's put on plans that cost above a certain numerical number. And they're looking at that and thinking, you know, what we may do is just, at that point, it'll be so expensive, if we just pay the penalty, put people on the exchange and let them go, and it'll be much cheaper for us. And I'm talking about to the tune of tens of millions of dollars that would otherwise go to their bottom line. That's a worry. Third worry is medical innovation. And the medical innovation worry I have is the device tax. And for our listeners out there, the device tax is if you make a medical device, and I think even a tongue blade is determined to be a medical device, but some of these incredible devices that I got to use in the operating room with laparoscopic surgery, that's things that we couldn't even conceive of doing 25 years ago. I would have never bet we could have done it. That the amazing surgeries, there's a 2.3% of their gross revenue, not of their net revenue, but of their gross revenue. That doesn't sound like a lot. When you do a gross receipts tax, a lot of these medical devices, and Tennessee is a big exporter of medical devices, these companies are already looking to shed jobs and go overseas. And I have an implantable lens in my left eye, a cataract removed, an implantable lens. I don't want that lens made in a foreign country where the quality control will not be what it is in this nation. So that's a third thing. Among many, many others, I have people come in literally every week asking about various things with this health care bill.
And what amazes me, and all these points that you bring up are extremely important, but it amazes me that we're not even having this dialogue, that it's always, you know, some sort of a political spin to get rid of it, keep it, get rid of it, keep it, but not actually discussing, hey, these are the things that are significantly wrong and must be changed. And because why? This is the cost, this is the impact. And I agree with you. I would say the most important here is probably the fact that we're not going to have enough doctors when we're going to need them down the road.
Oh, Brett, it truly is worrisome. I told this class this afternoon, I said, here is Vanderbilt University, a great university in my state, has laid off 1,000 people this past year in 2013. They're having to look at their bottom line. And they've cut the size of their medical school class and their MD, PhD program, which is where your future researchers come from. The other thing that the health care bill did, because of lower reimbursements to hospitals, there's a thing called the GME, Graduate Medical Education Cap. Medicare pays a certain amount of money to help educate doctors. And what hospitals were doing were paying for the other residents. We call that above the cap. Well, in our local area here, and this is unbelievable, in Tri-Cities, Tennessee, not a huge area. I think we're the 91st largest statistical metropolitan area in the country. We've lost 50 primary care residency slots per year. In 10 years, that's 500 primary care doctors that won't be trained. And that is incredibly troubling. It doesn't matter how many young people you can graduate from medical school. You then have to educate them in a residency program. And those are primary care doctors. All of those are primary care slots. Another implication that nobody thought about when they did this bill. And I, as you know, we've talked about this on your show. I read that bill and took my 30 years of clinical experience and thought through what would be the effects of these laws. And it's coming to fruition.
Absolutely. Well, if we could move on to the next thing. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it's important to note because the Speaker Boehner has decided to allow the Select Committee to go forward on Benghazi. And I just want to bring up this point because I was looking back on the Select Committee and Energy that Nancy Pelosi had put together. And while she's out there right now, you know, talking about what, you know, they may not participate for one reason or another, I looked at the makeup of that committee, and it had 9 Democrats and it had 6 Republicans. And to me, you know, considering that they were the majority party, I guess that's about all you could expect if you're the Republican Party and a minority at the time. And I think that when you're putting these committees together, the bottom line is to find out the facts and to really get to the bottom of whatever it is that you're looking into. And I don't think you can when you're allowing the other party to play politics and not play the role of actually seeking out the facts.
Again, so our listeners will know, I've been in Congress. This is my third term. My first term, I was in the minority, and basically all committees are made up based on the percent of Congress you have. And we had 178 of us, so we were in a pretty deep minority. And that was how our committees were divided up. I'm on the Education and the Workforce Committee and on Veterans Affairs. And we had whatever percent of that 435 we got in committee. And that's exactly what Speaker Boehner did here. Look, Brett, you hit the nail on the head. This can be a very simple committee if people will just come forward and tell the truth. I've been to a classified briefing and seen the videos at Benghazi. And anybody that's viewed those videos would never have come to the conclusion that Susan Rice did. Now, I didn't know that when I heard Susan Rice give those, I think, just talking points, basically from a script. But a short time, not too long later, we were able to see the CIA tapes. And it astonished me even more after I saw that. So we just need the truth. And I think if people will tell the truth, get all the information out, not have to get the Freedom of Information Act. Why'd you have to drag that out of somebody? Why do you just bring it up and put it on the table, and it is what it is, and reasonable people can look at it?
Well, absolutely. And, when it comes to Benghazi, I think the shame of it is that just the, I guess, willingness or lack of willingness to really get to the bottom of what happened there, because I think there are some deeper questions here. It's not just a matter of we lost an ambassador, which I believe is the first time in over 30 years. But we also lost other Americans. And questions need to be answered, such as, well, we really didn't know how long it would take for whatever attack on that facility to transpire. It could have been 3 hours. It could have been a day and a half. You had no idea how many people were actually on the ground or being impacted by this. And to not even try to rescue them, you don't know what the end result was. It's almost like you just assumed, okay, we're not going to do anything about this and we'll clean up when it's done. And I think that's the case here. And how do we look forward to protecting current and future ambassadors and staff in all these facilities around the world if we're not going to properly evaluate this and prepare correct security, currently, and deal with these situations and have systems in place so the next time we do respond properly?
Brett, I served 13 months just south of the demilitarized zone in Korea, 1973 and 74 in the 2nd Infantry Division, and it never occurred to me one time that if a war broke out, that if at all possible, or hostility broke out, or if someone was about to capture us and we were in the field, it never dawned on me that the guys south at Osan and in Seoul, Osan Air Force Base in Seoul, and the people there wouldn't come for us, that nobody would try. That's not what we do. And those families do deserve an explanation about why we didn't, and you're absolutely right. A battle is chaotic, and you don't know how long they're going to take, and you don't know what resources are being invested, and we didn't even try. And I think that disturbed me more than anything. Maybe we couldn't have done anything. I don't know. And the other point you brought up, as a surgeon, years, when I would go into the operating room, I would plan for a train wreck. I planned for the apps. I started thinking when I went in there, what happens if this happens, if we have bleeding, if we have this. In other words, I planned for the worst scenario I could dream up and hoped that I went on a train ride. I hope it all went smoothly, but I was prepared. Your point is that we have people out there today. As a matter of fact, we'll be visiting some folks in about 3 weeks in Vietnam. I'm going back to Vietnam on a visit to Southeast Asia, some fact gathering, and basically people are there. People are in places where there are people who are hostile to us, and it's reasonable for our people in harm's way. And a lot of those public servants in the State Department and other agencies, they're out there on the front line. They deserve to be protected.
Well, I'm glad to see. It's going to be interesting for you, I'm sure, to go to Vietnam. And I think right now, we do have, trade relations. American companies do business there. A lot of Americans I know have traveled there, and a lot of former vets have gone there and made peace with what they went through. But I think what's interesting now, what's interesting now is you see China incurring into the waters surrounding Vietnam and some of the islands that are close to Vietnam, and I think it's becoming a geopolitical issue.
No question about it, and I agree. I think I'm going to be able to bury some demons also on the trip, but agreed. China is in that area, and there's not a great relationship. People don't understand this, but the Chinese and the Vietnamese have never, they've had border skirmishes in the past, and so there are a lot of geopolitical decisions that are going to happen based on, and quite frankly, Brett, when we step back in the world, when America pulls back, the world sees this, and voids get filled, and it's not to say, the question I posed to these young students today was, I said, look, in Nigeria, this awful abduction that's taken place with these young girls, and my heart goes out to those families, said, should we be involved militarily? Can we be? Is it an ethical issue? Should we not? We can't be the world's policeman. There's no question about that. But certainly when we back up and the world perceives us as being not as strong, those voids get filled by somebody, and many times it's somebody who's not very good.
No, it's an excellent point, and if I could say, I was going to actually go to Boko Haram next, but after you get back from Vietnam, I'd love to have you come on and talk to you in greater length of some of the things that are going on there, and just I'm sure we could learn a lot from what you're going to learn over there.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and I do hope that any of the personal stuff that you're able to reconcile that as well. When we look at what's going on in Nigeria, and this isn't just Nigeria, it's the surrounding nations such as Cameroon and Chad and Niger and others that these types of groups spill into. And I think it's like world-shattering, in my opinion, when you watch what happens to young girls and young people, and, well, any people for that matter, but particularly how their lives are taken at such a young age and things that happen. And I have to question, maybe the United States doesn't have to be the world's police. We certainly have to be a good role in it. But why do we have the United Nations? Why do we have all these international organizations? If we're going to continue to watch these things and these acts of terrorism to occur, and the world really standing back and doing nothing about it, that's the part that
shameful. Brett, it's shameful. And, I mean, it truly is shameful that the world hasn't stepped forward. And next week when we go back into session, we're going to bring up, I think it's 5 bills on human trafficking. And, I mean, obviously no one knew that this was going to happen at the time when we had this on the schedule, but I'll tell you, it was. I went to a briefing before I left on Friday to come home, and it was absolutely mind-boggling to me when I saw the depth and the amount of money and human suffering that goes with it. I had no idea. That's how naive I am. And I think this will be something that the public ought to pay attention to next week. And I think these bills are going to get and kudos over to Michelle Obama for focusing on this. I think that's a good thing. As a parent, I think we all can our hearts go out. I saw a picture today of some of the young girls, and of course they've been forced to quotes convert to Islam. And, I mean, they're terrified, and some of those little girls will probably not survive this ordeal, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Michelle Obama, because I said last week I don't agree with her on a lot of things, but her being vocal about this, I think, was a great thing, and I stand with her on that. But here's something, not related to Michelle Obama, but Michelle Bachmann's a congresswoman who has been pretty vocal on a lot of these types of issues. And the same people who are now coming out, in support of, say, Michelle Obama and others, were screaming at Michelle Bachmann when she was raising the issue. And then I'll add another person to the story, because he's my congressman, Congressman Chris Smith. Chris Smith has done great work for 20-plus years on these types of issues. Yeah. So I think that, all three of them, kudos to all three of them for the particular times that they're working on this. But I think it's time for all of us to join together and actually effectively do something about it.
Brett, when you're right about an issue. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or apolitical. Mm-hmm. And this is wrong, and it needs to be made right. And I think that's the thing. Anybody who steps up and is vocal about this, I'm going to be supportive of them. And I may disagree with them on a lot of other issues, and as you do with her. But in this issue, she's right.
Well, it's true, and there's so much crossover on this particular issue, to be honest with you. I mean, Samantha Powers, I have her book. It's touching my foot right now, the one that she wrote on genocide. It's an important book. I might not agree with everything she said in it, but the topic is so important to be studied and discussed because you see it all the time. And, you know, we look at something like Darfur, and then we say never again. And, you know, we looked at the Holocaust, we say never again, but it's happening again.
It is, and I'll tell you what, we've turned a blind eye almost on the continent of Africa, and I mean the genocide that's occurred there is beyond pale, and it might not. And actually, we've done some good things in Africa. For instance, the typhoid. We've looked at malaria. We've looked at AIDS. We've done some good things there, but this is not one of them. And I think you're right. The UN. This is a perfect place for the UN to exert some of its power and realize, look, there's some really bad people on this, or really nasty, bad people. And there needs to be some force out there to contradict that. And like I said, the United States can't be the world's policeman. We can't afford it, nor should we try to be. It's a world issue. It's not just a United States issue.
Right, and I actually think that President George W. Bush took a pretty good leadership role in helping many countries in Africa.
Oh, he definitely did. I remember the first year I went to the yearly prayer breakfast, and when I was there, I got to meet some people from around the world, and they were raving about George Bush, and I couldn't understand why. And then I realized it was Dr. Frist, our Senator Frist from Tennessee, cardiac heart surgeon, and he had realized the issue with AIDS and how just a little bit of aid could help reduce so much human suffering. And so that's why they were so grateful, is that we've really done an amazing job of healthcare, and that's what we're really good at that. And we should be doing more of that in the world. I think instead of shooting bullets, we can shoot with our doctors and our healthcare people. And there's nobody better in the world at that than we are.
Amen. And spreading free market capitalism.
That's probably freed more people than anything. There's no question. But you've heard Arthur Brooks speak, I'm sure.
Yes.
And free market capitalism has freed more people from poverty than any. There are no government programs that ever come close to what the free market system has done.
Nope, and the numbers are indisputable.
There's no question. If you look at the last 35 years, it's been remarkable how many, and I mean, one is too many, but how many people live on $1 a day? That's gone down dramatic. One is too many, but that number has gone down dramatically.
Yes, it has. Well, Congressman Phil Roe from the great state of Tennessee, I always thank you so much for spending the time that you do and really getting into these issues the way we do. And I wish you luck when you get back into session, and I wish you a safe trip when you go over to Asia, and I'm sure that you'll bring back some great stuff for us as well there.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks very much.
All right, take care. Well, before I let you go, give your website so everyone can go check you out.
Oh, it's www.roe, that's roe.house.gov, www.roe.house.gov. Love to have you visit the site.
Excellent. Well, good luck and God bless. Take care.
Thanks, Brett.
All right.